Hello, welcome to a new episode. This is Sundeep and I'm Ganesh.
Hello.
So, we're going to be talking about the recently concluded Gartner event, the Gartner Data Analytics Summit in Orlando. We'll talk about what we've learned from this event and what are some of the interesting trends and insights we've learned from here.
And a little bit about the event. The event is the largest gathering of leaders in decision making related to data analytics and data science space in the United States and the world across. The event had 4,000 plus footfalls, which covered decision makers, practitioners, service providers, and thought leaders in the space. A good gathering of analysts led over 150 different sessions from analysts, equal number of sessions from vendors displaying the newer capabilities in the individual space.
Let's talk about what we've learned, Sandeep. So, what were your top learnings from this event?
The top learnings I have from the event are the failure rate of AI adaptation in industry. This is a stark number that came to the fore. 86% of AI investments have been failures based on Gartner research. And the only players who have been able to successfully implement AI solutions are large software vendors and providers who have successfully deployed large amounts of money for these initiatives.
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting, right? Everyone talks about AI, and that's almost a standard marketing pitch, not just for analytics companies, but pretty much for everyone. So 85% is a huge number. Right. So what were the details in terms of why projects fail?
Some of the reasons that were called out by analysts are companies going behind the cool factor and not the conceptual implementation of AI, not identifying a business problem which needs to be solved versus trying to say I'm ML enabled or I'm deep learning enabled or saying we are on the AI bandwagon. That's been one biggest bottleneck. Companies not willing to invest in money on a longer duration because AI implementations need commitment from the leadership for longer implementations. A model that is built for today's business case may not be relevant in a 3-month period. That kind of commitment has not been demonstrated by bulk of the players. That's one of the second reasons why investments in these have failed.
Okay, so interesting. So you're saying a longer term commitment and planning how to integrate this with the business and a variety of factors which could probably ensure success of the project.
And the third hurdle that was specifically pointed out, an increasing problem, is the availability of talent in organizations to actually take you on an AI journey. It is not as easy as hiring a person with Python skills on my team. It needs a combination of person who would understand the business, gel well with the teams, ensure whatever you're building is apt, intuitive, and then take it to production.
Yeah, so talent continues to be a major talking point. Yeah. So, in fact, compared to the last couple of years when I had attended the Gartner event, the conversation was a little different. Earlier, there was excitement on the horizon in terms of AI was relatively newer back then, and so even in the sessions I heard a lot of very broad-based terminologies being used, whereas now I think in the sessions which I attended they were talking more about the points you mentioned in terms of roadmap, how to align it with the business, or even explainability of AI models, yes. And even the thorny topic of ethics. So all of these were talked about, where people have gone a few steps deeper and are talking about the implementation aspects and not just talking about the buzzwords alone anymore.
Yeah, on topic of ethics, there were two sessions that I wanted to point out. There was one session by analyst Helen. She is the head Gartner specialist in HR analytics. She mentioned about the challenge employees are having to bring in AI-based solutions to employee data. How do you use employee data? There was a good session about do's and don'ts with employee data. And the simple summary she had called out was, if you can confidently explain how the AI model works in using the employee data to your employees in a town hall, go ahead and do it. If you are not sure that you can actually stand up and explain how the application is going to use your data, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So that's a simplistic one, but I thought that session had a lot of value in terms of setting the baseline. Right. If you can't manage your internal employee data successfully, your ability to take it to your customers is nowhere there.
Yeah, I think this is put well, where you say if you can talk about it in a town hall, then probably you're doing things which are not that intimate or private. And how are the keynote sessions? Gartner is known for these broad trends which look 5 years, 10 years into the future. So what were some of those interesting learnings in terms of the broad trends for the industry?
From a broad trend standpoint, I'll talk about the first guest keynote speaker, Annie Duncan. She had a very good example of giving an analogy of how the AI journey is happening versus how the business are adapting to AI. She talks about the North Indian Patriots versus Seattle Seahawks final game, where the Seahawks Seattle at the last 20-second line, they fumble a ball. and the hell breaks loose because they lose the Super Bowl. And the analogy, the playbook that was executed and used from a statistical playbook standpoint, that was one of the best moves that was called for. But the execution of it fumbled when the quarterback was not able to hold on to the ball at the finish line. So the ball fumbled. So the decision is what was driving the behavior of everyone, talking about how Seahawks was a dumb team making that call in that moment. They could have done 10 other things. There are a combination of things that can play out. And she just transpose that same behavior of how people behave into business, where she talked about AI journey is you taking a bet on what you know today on a future prediction. You are premising that because I'm making an investment in AI, this is the outcomes I will get. But you're not guaranteed that the outcome would come in, similar to how whether the player was able to catch the ball or not, whether he dropped it. That, I think, summarized the current journey of AI players, where you're placing bets thinking that you'll get these results. But getting the results is not assured, and the impression or the outcomes largely are going to be either blamed on AI or credited to AI. That is a trend I have noticed.
So it's all going to be dependent on the outcome, whether one is considered a genius or making a biggest blunder. So I sat through a keynote session where an analyst talked about 7 willful disruptions we should plan for. So every industry is disrupted time and again by new entrants, new ideas. So for a company which is successful today, for them to be successful in the future, they'll have to see who are those disruptors, what are those disrupting trends, and for them to stay current, they will have to disrupt themselves internally, and that's what willful disruption is about. So here he talked about a framework for initiating this internal disruption and how you can go on a variety of offensive, defensive modes. So that was interesting, and also he laid out 7 disruptions which are coming. The top ones I recall, one was quantum computing. A lot of people talk about it now, and the human-machine interface. It's just coming, and there was also real-time natural language translation. So we had the Google Pixel Buds, which translates as one speaks.
One speaks in different languages.
Right, yeah. So that was interesting, and they say how that could get even better, and it could disrupt industries in many ways. And one other was software marketplace, where just like we have an Amazon marketplace, there's an interesting concept where pretty much every software can be bought in one single place, irrespective of vendors, irrespective of the technology. So there, the people holding the keys to this marketplace will pretty much be very powerful. So these are some broad trends which we see evolving, and there was a timeline in terms of some coming in 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, or maybe 10 years. But these are things for leaders to plan for. Yeah. And any other sessions you wanted to bring up?
One session I want to bring up is how this was a session on service providers, and Jürgen Heisenberg specifically talks about how service providers are trying to adapt to their changing market needs. The earlier wave of AI service providers have a heavy focus on building platforms, building capabilities that are unique and differentiating. And with the spread of open source and the low level of risk taking by enterprise, now the emphasis has turned to service providers coming up with end-to-end solutions that one can provide. And these services are meant towards augmenting the skill shortage in organizations. That's number one. Number two, the erstwhile platform or SaaS providers like say ServiceNow or ServiceNow and Salesforce. These are the providers now that are looking at the other way around, where they're offering their entire bouquet of services as a platform. So they're moving to the PaaS model, where enterprise can rely on AI investments done by these organizations internally and open it up as a platform, so that say a retail manufacturing company can combine their sales data that is already on Salesforce, take the AI ML capabilities that Salesforce is exposing as APIs, build forecasting models, clustering algorithms, any of it, and seamlessly tie that back into the existing Salesforce investments, thereby augmenting customers' needs, not just with the core competency, but adding more capabilities that are in the AI space, so that lock in with customers and engaging more value with customers. This was on the existing investment side, and organizations have been constantly pushing the market for tools that can enable citizen data scientists to be more productive. And that's where the Magic Quadrant today now has 9, which is an open source based ML and DL platform, which allows anyone with intermediate knowledge of their business use case and understanding of not specifically modeling, but understanding of the business intent, can start building workflow pipelines through a UI driven approach.
Oh, okay.
Consider this: with 3 years back when the AI hype was on, we needed that unicorn data scientists who could do a bunch of things. Now the threshold has come down to a UI interface in 9, which is a close example, which would allow you right from data connection, building a model, running the model, and deploying the pipeline if you had an enterprise license. So that's one disruption was the theme across multiple both analyst sessions as well as vendor sessions.
So democratization of the entire data science life cycle,
Yes.
and how you can bring in augmented analytics to enrich the business workflows. Yeah. And so all of these were interesting sessions and takeaways. And it was pretty large. You mentioned 4,000 plus participants, right? And also there were about 110 plus vendors.
Yes.
And there was a huge exhibit hall.
Yeah.
And there was pretty much everyone who has a platform or a product in analytics were there. Like it was pretty much everyone under one single roof. So when I spoke to people who were dropping by, and I was trying to get a sense of what is their reading. A lot of people were attending the Gartner event for the first time. What is the experience of talking to, say, 100 vendors and hearing all of those AI pitches? So one, I think they said that there's a lot of terminology. Almost every booth to booth, if I go in and see, I don't see any difference. Everyone claims to do the same thing. So that probably needs some further deep diving in terms of what you want, what they are looking for. But the good part was it was easy to understand and find out what is up for grabs and who are the people doing it. And many of them had demos. And obviously it gives a good opportunity to quickly learn about what is there in the market.
The demo that we had set up for face recognition using a deep learning model, that I think was a good hook for us in the booth, where people would come as and just stand in front of the camera to try out whether the model can guess their age or right. There have been instances where the model was able to predict your age exact to the year, and people were very surprised, to say the least.
They freaked out.
Freaked out. Few of them, freaked out that how in the hell can this tell my real age? And then there were examples where our model went wavy. It was not able to put you in a bracket. It was like 20 years off. So the model has some more learnings to do. That's an example of how what you create as a starting baseline may not be relevant even within a few months or few weeks period.
So the way I see it, probably it's a good demo of seeing AI in action. When we talk about all of these conceptually, when you show that, okay, this is your face and then this is what AI can do with that, and potentially tell a story out of it. So that is kind of it is good for marketing and also good for explaining to people. Yeah. So overall, I think we've had a good conversation, and it was a good week there at Gartner in Florida. So thanks for sharing.